Vous écoutez le podcast Apprendre le dessin, épisode 8, chiffres de l'infini et de la perfection, et du Christ cosmique.
Je me présente, je suis Sylvain Pierre Durif, alias le Grand Monarque, le Christ cosmique, l'Homme vert ou Merlin l'Enchanteur.
Bienvenue sur le podcast Apprendre le dessin avec Yo, le podcast qui vous dévoile les secrets des plus grands artistes. Parce que le talent, ma grand-mère m'a toujours dit, ça s'apprend.
Hey guys, bienvenue dans l'épisode 8 du podcast Apprendre le dessin. J'espère que vous avez passé de bonnes fêtes de fin d'année et un bon Noël. Donc je vous souhaite un joyeux Noël et une très très bonne année 2019. Alors j'ai un très beau cadeau pour vous, mais tout d'abord on va faire un petit point sur cette année 2018 qui se termine. Donc l'année 2018 pour moi ça a été vraiment le lancement du projet Apprendre le dessin qui avance bien. Donc on a lancé la chaîne YouTube en juin dernier et on est aujourd'hui à 3000 abonnés, donc ça marche bien. Reprise des articles sur le blog aussi, apprendredessin.com. On va essayer en 2019 d'avoir un article par semaine vraiment régulièrement. Il y a la page Facebook qui est très active avec l'artiste du jour qui va reprendre en janvier. On va lancer le compte Pinterest aussi en janvier, donc il va y avoir tous les jeudis une fiche tips qui va être en fait un résumé en une fiche de la vidéo de la veille du mercredi 2 minutes tips. Un peu sur le modèle de Grise and Norm si vous connaissez. Donc voilà, tous les jeudis sur Pinterest, il y aura une fiche résumée du tips de la veille. Donc pour 2019, il y a beaucoup de choses excitantes aussi qui sont prévues. On continue la chaîne YouTube sur le rythme de 2 vidéos par semaine. Donc une vidéo tous les mercredis et tous les vendredis à 17h. Et le mercredi, c'est le jour du 2 minutes tips. Donc on maintient aussi le podcast mensuel, un podcast par mois. Et je vais essayer de faire plus de vlogs parce que j'ai pas mal de bons retours sur les vlogs. Donc on va essayer d'être plus régulier aussi dans les vlogs en 2019. Et d'ailleurs il va y avoir pas mal de vlogs de voyage assez sympas. Donc je garde la surprise encore, mais on va voyager en 2019. Donc voilà, 2018 c'était vraiment le lancement de la machine. Et en 2019, l'aventure continue quoi. On va faire de grandes choses. Alors, n'oubliez pas de rester jusqu'à la fin de l'épisode pour connaître le gagnant du concours du mois dernier qui a gagné le dessin original de Chloé Nicolet. Il y aura le tirage au sort à la fin de l'épisode. Et donc je vous ai dit que j'avais un beau cadeau pour vous en cette fin d'année. Donc la dernière invitée du podcast en 2018, c'est mon amie Ana Ramirez Gonzalez que j'ai rencontrée à Pixar en 2013. Elle était stagiaire en même temps que moi. Moi j'étais en animation et elle était en visual development. Et elle a travaillé sur le dernier film de Pixar, Coco. Donc si vous l'avez pas vu, courez le voir parce que c'est vraiment un chef-d'œuvre. C'est un projet sur lequel elle s'est vachement impliquée parce que Anna est d'origine mexicaine et donc elle a pu apporter beaucoup de sa culture au film. Donc ça on va en parler en profondeur dans l'interview. Restez bien jusqu'à la fin parce que vous pourrez gagner à votre tour une carte dédicacée de Anna qu'elle m'a envoyée de Pixar parce que il faut savoir qu'à Pixar ils ont leur propre poste. Donc c'est une jolie carte dédicacée de Coco qu'elle a fait et vous pouvez voir à quoi elle ressemble dans l'article du podcast sur le blog apprendredessin.com. Et donc évidemment il va y avoir une nouveauté avec ce podcast, c'est que ça va être le premier podcast en anglais. Donc la première question va être en français parce que Anna parle un petit peu français, elle parle bien même, mais c'était un peu compliqué pour elle de faire toute l'interview comme ça en français. Donc la première question en français et la suite est en anglais. Et donc si vous comprenez pas bien l'anglais, il vous suffit d'aller regarder la version YouTube du podcast où l'interview est traduite en français. Donc voilà, je crois que j'ai tout dit. On est parti. Ana Ramirez est dans le podcast Apprendre le dessin. Salut à tous et bienvenue dans l'épisode numéro 8 du podcast Apprendre le dessin. Je reçois aujourd'hui mon amie Ana Ramirez, qui est development artist à Pixar et qui a travaillé sur le film Coco. Salut Anna!
Salut!
Comment ça va?
Ça va bien, et toi?
Ça va super.
Merci pour l'invitation.
Merci à toi d'avoir accepté, c'est génial. Je vais commencer par une première question en français et puis après on fera le reste de l'interview en anglais parce que tu parles un petit peu de français. Moi je trouve que tu parles très bien.
Ça. Merci.
Alors on y va pour la première question en français. Est-ce que tu peux nous raconter un petit peu tes origines, où est-ce que tu es née et si le dessin a toujours fait partie de ta vie?
Oui, je suis née au Mexique. J'habitais au Mexique toute ma vie jusqu'à j'avais 18 ans. Et après, j'ai déménagé en France et j'habitais à Montpellier pour aller à l'école d'art appliqué.
C'est là que tu as appris le français?
Un peu, oui. Oui. Et je suis allée à l'école d'art appliqué. J'ai fait le mana.
Une mana?
Une mana J'habitais en France pour 2 années, je crois, et après, je suis revenue au Mexique et j'ai travaillé sur mon portfolio pour appliquer à CalArts.
Okay, so now we can switch to English if you want.
Okay.
Did you always knew you wanted to draw?
No, not always, actually.
Okay.
I wanted to be a musician for a very long time. I
Oh.
really wanted to go to music school, but I wasn't very disciplined. I wasn't very good at it. And not that I wasn't good, I just like didn't have the dedication,
Mhm.
you know, to spend time practicing, to put the time into it that, you know, for me to get better. So when I was in my last year of high school, we were looking, everyone was looking into schools, you know, the schools they wanted to go to. Some of my friends were going to go study abroad, and I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like I knew I wanted to like play music, but then, you know, every music program required me to be very good at something, you know, or to already know how to like play an instrument or like do what I was applying for, which makes sense, obviously, but I wasn't very proficient, you know, at any of those things or disciplines. So my mom was actually the one who suggested for me to take a drawing class. And I didn't want to at first because I was like, no, I want to play music. You don't believe in me, but I can do it.
But why did she suggest that? Because you were already drawing?
She thought so. Yeah. I don't know. I had never really drawn in my life. I mean, I only drew like how kids draw, you know, it's like when you're bored, you draw, or when you're in school, you draw. So that's the only thing I did, you know, before my last year of high school. I would just like doodle on my you know, notebooks in class, or, you know, things like that. But I wasn't really like an artist or anything. I didn't consider myself to be, but I loved films. I loved music. You know, I loved like a lot of the arts, and I was interested in a lot of the arts, but I feel like film was huge for me in high school. Like all of high school, I just like binge watched a ton of films when Blockbuster still existed.
Yeah.
So I would go to Blockbuster and like rent all the movies and then just spend like entire weekends just watching movies. But I didn't like think about like what I could do with that, you know, like animation and film were so big in Mexico. I mean, there's a lot of amazing like filmmakers or Mexican filmmakers, but we didn't really have the resources or like the schools at the time. Maybe like a couple, but not that many options. So it's not something you think about, you know. Like when you're that young, you don't know how many options you have, you know. Since I always loved music and stuff, that's all I thought I could do. But my mom, I think, kind of saw that maybe I had something in me, you know, like seeing my drawings on my notebooks or something. Maybe she thought that, you know, I don't know, moms know best sometimes, you know. So I think my mom kind of knew. So she was like, why don't you try taking other classes? I mean, she knew I loved art already.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing that she could think of that was available to me at the time. So she took me to an art school, and I actually enrolled in a watercolor class. And then I signed up for a live drawing class and then a comic class. By the end of it, or not even by the end, like the first 2 classes, I was like over the moon. And I was like, This is amazing. It's so fun. And we had a ton of homework for those classes. And I had to sacrifice my Saturdays because they were on Saturday, and I had 2 classes on Saturdays, and they were each 4 hours. So I would spend like pretty much all morning and afternoon at the school. But I didn't care because I was like having the best time, and I loved it right away. I think I kind of just knew that that's like the path that I wanted to follow.
Yeah, you knew you wanted to do art for a living at this time.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. And when you came back from Montpellier, did you work a bit in Mexico before applying to CalArts?
A little bit, yeah. I worked. So I'm an ice skater since I was little. I used to skate competitively growing up.
Oh, cool.
So that's another little fact. And that was my whole life. Like my sister and I spent all day at the ice rink. Like Saturdays and Sundays, we'd go to early practice, like 6 a.m., And I think it was really good for us because it taught us discipline. And I think it was helpful for me because it kind of set the standard of how often, or how often you have to practice to be good at something, or how much you have to do it to show yourself whether you enjoy it or not.
Yeah.
So because of ice skating and stuff, like I had a few skills I could use for work. So during those 6 months of me being in Mexico, it was really difficult because I did not know what I was going to do. I didn't know if I would get into CalArts this time because this was my second time applying. And, I had already come back from France. My parents kind of wanted me to stay in France.
Really?
Before I left. I think they really thought that, I'd have like a good future there.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually thought, like, if I don't get into CalArts, then I can go back to France and practice and then go to Gobelin if I can, because it's really hard to get into as well. But it was another option. But yeah, anyway, so that year, while I was thinking about my options or like what would happen, blah, 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 I worked as an ice skating teacher. That's the only job I ever had before college. So
Okay.
I just taught ice skating. So nothing related to art. I wasn't at a point where I could teach it because I honestly still wonder how I even got into CalArts because I know it was my second time applying, but I actually like looking back at my portfolio compared to other people's portfolios, I was like, I got super lucky. I have no idea. I didn't know how to draw at all. But then maybe they saw something. I don't know.
Maybe they saw the same thing that your mom saw in your drawings.
That could be. That's true.
How was the school? What kind of experience was it to be in CalArts?
Oh, it was the best. I had such a good time. I had the best time. I loved it. Like, I got super depressed the year after I graduated because I was like, no. It's like when you work so hard to get somewhere and then you're there and then it's over and you're like, oh no, what now? Because for so long, like, I just wanted to go to that school. Like, I just wanted to. That was my ultimate goal in life. And I was like, I don't care how long it takes, even if I'm like, if I have to wait 5 years or whatever, like, I'll just keep trying. Or that's what I thought, at least. I'm pretty stubborn. So I was like, it has to happen. Luckily, I didn't have to wait that long. And, it took two times, but, I was able to get in. But I don't know, like, I think I just valued it so much more because it was hard to obtain.
Yes, of course.
And I know that my parents were like making a huge effort for me to be there too, because as an international student, we don't get loans of any kind. So it's all just on you, So it was like a big deal for me. And, I didn't want to let my parents down, of course, if they were already doing that. And I wanted it so badly. Like, I didn't really know what I was going to do at CalArts. I just had seen the school and I had heard about it. And I saw the work that came out of it. And I thought it was so cool. But I didn't really know that much about animation at the time or anything. So there was a lot of learning, a lot of really late nights or sleepless nights, working and working and working, learning things, asking questions. But I think the community is the best part about CalArts. Like, everybody that I met there is great. And, all my friends and like, the friendships that you form and how supportive everybody is. One of my favorite things was when people finished their films during crunch time, even though they were so tired, they would help out their other friends who hadn't finished. That's like the kind of school that it is. I don't know about now.
When you were studying there, what was your focus? Did you know if you wanted to do animation, character design, storyboarding? I don't know.
No, I had no idea. I knew nothing. Like I could have gotten into school for any program, and I would have just like figured it out there. Because I wanted to do everything. Like everything was new. I wanted to, I ended up getting into the experimental animation program, not the traditional character animation program, which I think was the best for me, honestly, because I think I was just so hungry for new things that like being in that department was great because it allowed me to explore. I don't really understand or want to do 3D. Like I know the basics of it, but it's not something I was super interested in. Like I respect it tremendously. I feel like it's really difficult, and I admire and look up to the people who do it, but it's not something that was for me. So I think it was good because in experimental, we didn't have any of those classes. So we had a little bit of extra time for us to cater our own program and the things that we wanted to do. So I ended up taking like a lot of costume design classes. I took classes in the theater department, lighting for staging and set design. And I also took other classes in the music department. Like I continued, I started taking cello lessons there, and that was really fun. And African dance and other things. But ultimately, I feel like a lot of those classes ended up informing my practice today. Like what I do at work with design and stuff, like absolutely, that costume design class was so useful, or the lighting or the staging, so it all worked out in the end. But I was really clueless when I was in school, like my first year, because I was just trying to take everything, and I was always like overworking myself. I mean, I still have that tendency to like overcommit to things, but I think it was really good because then I know what was out there and what I could do. So I learned a ton. It was a lot of hard work, but I think having people so motivated around you also helps you be motivated.
Yeah.
But I also had a lot of fun. Like thankfully, because I would take classes in so many different departments, I made a lot of different friends. And then the only job I could have on campus was to be a bartender because I was paid by the school, not by the government. So I was a bartender, and that was like the best because it paid really well. And also like you get to eat and drink for free, and you get to like socialize and make friends because you're the bartender. So everyone's like being nice to you. Yeah. So that was so fun. And I did it with my friend Rachel. That was the best. I loved that. And I made a lot of friends in graphic design and music.
It was 4 years, right?
4 years, yeah.
At what point did you get the internship at Pixar?
My third year.
Third year.
Yeah.
So how did it happen?
So my second year, after portfolio day, we had. So I don't know. I guess for people who don't know, just really quickly, every year at CalArts, there's this day called Portfolio Day, which is a day in the year when people from the industry come and look at our work. So there's like tables set in the main atrium, like in the main gallery, and then it's divided by years. So first, second, third, fourth, and then there's a table for people who have graduated. And then people just lay down their portfolios and like set up their computers or whatever they need. Then we leave, and then we come back a few hours later, and there's lists on boards of the callbacks. So like if a studio is interested in you, then they put your name down on those lists, and then that means you have an interview that day, and then maybe you have a higher chance to get a job or an internship. So it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. And even just for like the feedback, like if a studio calls you back, then that means that they think you have potential to work for them. And then they'll tell you what to work on. So even if you don't end up getting the internship, then, at least like what you can improve if you do want to work for that studio. So it's great. It's really great. So my first year, I didn't get any callbacks. My second year, I got 3 callbacks. I got Laika, I got Disney feature, and I got Jib Jab.
Oh yeah.
And then I didn't get anything out of that. Like I made it to the finals for the Disney feature animation internship. And then one of my friends ended up getting it, so I didn't get it, which was fine. And then the next year, third year, I was like, well, I got feedback from Disney. So I was like, of course, like maybe I'll get Disney. And Pixar, for some reason, I just hadn't considered because I just put them in an like entirely different league, maybe.
Yeah.
Like I thought it was like very difficult. It just seemed kind of like this, like, no, I didn't even consider it because it just felt so like different,
Yeah.
So I wasn't thinking about Pixar at all. So I was just like trying to get the job or the internship at Disney because in a way it felt more familiar. But then I didn't even get a call back from Disney that year. So I ended up, so I was, my mom was visiting at the time and we were at my house and we went to take a nap because I hadn't slept at all the day before. And she stayed up with me, like helping me like print stuff out and like organize everything. So it was really cute. And then my friend called me, my housemate. She was already at school and she called me and she's like, oh my God, like Pixar called you back, like get here right now. My friend Nikki. So she's the one who told me because I was sleeping. So she called me and she was like, you're on the Pixar list. You should come. You have an interview at 1. And I was like, oh my God. So like I got ready and I didn't have a car. So I walked to school every day and it was like 30 minutes away. So my mom and I like ran.
Oh.
That's when my mom was like, yeah, maybe you need a car. But then before that, she's like, it's so nice to walk. Anyway, so we like ran to school and it's like uphill. So when I got there, I was like so sweaty, like, and then I saw the list and it was true. I was on the list and I was so excited because I'm like, oh, so cool. And, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, it means something, but it doesn't mean that you will get the job, It's just really exciting to know that they think your work is good. So I had my interview and then the person doing the interview is a production designer for Coco. His name's Harley Jessup.
Mm-hmm.
He production designed James and the Giant Peach, which I love. It's like my favorite film from my childhood, or one of them. So I had my interview with him, and then he's like, oh, it seems like you like drawing from different cultures. Like you're inspired by a lot of different things. Like, do you want to talk more about it? And then I was like, yeah, I mean, I grew up in Mexico and, but I've lived in other places and I've traveled some, a bit. So I'm always inspired by the things that I see. And at the time, my sister was living in Holland, doing her master's. So I ended up I had just spent a winter there. So I added a lot of that in like my sketches from that trip. Plus some of the drawings I had done in France and, new things and Mexican culture stuff. So I think ultimately that's what kind of caught his eye. Mm-hmm. And they were already working on it. So he knew that he needed someone who kind of knew Mexican or understood like Mexican culture a little better. So then he was like, yes.
The perfect fit.
I guess so. I mean, we have like, Harley and I think have very similar taste. So that was kind of like serendipity, it was like fate. And then, but there's so many talented Mexican people, so it could have been anyone. There's like a ton of great people. A lot of amazing people were on that list that year, that were also from other places, there were 2 people from Gobelin there that year actually. And more than one person.
It was Ellen and Mandy?
Yeah, exactly. Who are like amazing. I love their work.
Of course.
Like they're both so good. I actually bought a print from Mandy like a couple years ago and I love it. It's like in my room.
Oh, cool.
It's so pretty. I love their work. So, there more than one person gets an internship. So 2, 3, 4 people sometimes. But I just really wanted to be one of them. So after that, I was like, oh my God, I have a chance. Because he was like, send me your portfolio just as is. Because I'm like, should I change anything? Should I fix anything? He's like, no, just change it. Send it as is. And if we like it, then we'll let you know. Um, so I was like, cool. So I sent it like the next day, and I made it pretty. Like I added all these like flowers on the outside of it so it stands out, and like tried really hard. Um, and then I think I waited about like a month or two,
Really?
where I was just getting emails of like, congrats, you made it to the next round.
Oh
Or
yeah.
your portfolio is still being considered. But
Yeah.
now that I'm here, I'm like, oh yeah, it makes sense. Like it takes so long to coordinate people.
Mm-hmm.
At work, it's like so hard to like get all the people that you need together in a room. So I think it takes a while because all the production designers vote, but it's hard to like schedule that. So I think that's why. But on our end, we didn't know that. So we were just like, oh, it's all we had to do. So we are like, oh no, I haven't heard. So I would email them like every week. I was really annoying. But anyway, in the end, they're like, yeah, we want to offer you the internship this summer. And that was the summer of 2013. So
Yeah.
my third year of college. Yeah.
So
That's when I met you.
Exactly. That's where we met.
Yeah.
And how was the internship then?
Oh, the internship was great. It was really great. I got really, really lucky. I think for an intern, it's very different when you come in a film that's like new and it's in development still, as opposed to maybe like when you come in a little later and you're already, everyone's already in production. First of all, because if you're in production, or when a film is in production, everybody's really busy, so they don't have time to mentor you, or not as much. And then you kind of like get a little lost in the process because no one tells us what we should be doing. Like even if you have guidance, like you're like, oh my God, I've never done this before. So it's really scary. But in my case, like I was really lucky because I came in when Coco was still in
the beginning.
development. Yeah, it was the very beginning. So, everyone was so chill. Everyone had so much time. Harley really, really like took a lot of time to mentor me and like talk to me and explain to me like what I had to do and like talk about the film. And everybody who was in the show at the time was really great.
And how was it to work on this project that was so perfectly fit for you, a film that is based on your culture?
Oh man, it was really great. I mean, it's kind of like, now I'm worried because I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever work on something so meaningful again, So I have to make it happen for myself now, because now like that was like the bar that was set for me. It's really high, of my expectations of a film and like what I want to feel when I work on something, or how I want to feel when I work on something. Because I felt very, very like connected in a way, very responsible to do a good job, because as the only Mexican person in the art team, I was like, oh, a lot of that pressure's on me, because if something's not right or not like authentic or not like accurate culturally, then like people might say like, or tell me like, why didn't you say something,
Is
So
this something that is it something that they asked you, that the director asked you to do, or did you take this as your own responsibility?
Eventually they did. Yeah. So when I first started, they wouldn't rely on me so much because they didn't really know how much I was like connected to the culture. But then slowly a lot of similarities started coming out. Like my dad's also a shoemaker in Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
So, he learned to make shoes like traditionally, like you see in the movies. Now he's like on the business side of things, but he started out as that. And then my mom's side of the family, her dad and her brothers also make shoes or work in the shoe industry.
Oh, cool.
So, because that's like a huge thing in my hometown in Mexico. So, that's like the main industry there, and people do really well because it's like leather, stuff, but it's very like artisanal.
And you wanted to do music.
And I wanted to do music, exactly.
So you felt very close with with Miguel and the story.
Yes, very. And, my dad was able to send a bunch of reference for the shoe shop and record a lot of the people working, like doing all the things that you see them do in the movie, when they're in their workshop and stuff. So a lot of that reference came from my dad, actually, and we gave it to the animators. Like I sent it to Lee, and then my dad sent like a bunch of like pieces and things that you use for working with the shoes and the leather and stuff. So we used all of that as reference for shading and for design for the art department as well. So I think slowly they started relying more on me for those things. So I started, getting invited to more and more meetings just to have a second opinion of someone who's from there. And I translated a bunch of things for the movie as well. Like most of the signs that you see in the film, like I did those translations.
Oh, okay.
And, added a few ideas for the script of like suggestion. I would send them suggestions for like, names or just ideas of like what would be funny. So I don't know. Yeah, I felt more and more responsible for the work that I would do or that I was doing in the film, because obviously I didn't, I wanted to do a good job, and I wanted to make sure that they represented Mexico in a positive way, as opposed to like the stereotypical way that we're used to.
Yeah, of course. And did you do some research in your own culture?
Oh, of course. Yeah. So much. I learned so much about Mexican culture. It's crazy. Like, I was always interested in it. I love like, reading about like the Aztec and like Mayan culture, communities and the different languages and stuff that, that exist. And I love the art. I love the art of, that all those indigenous communities make. It's so beautiful, and I find it so amazing. And I always read about it because they've been, pretty marginalized in Mexico for many years now, because people don't care, But I think it's so important to preserve that. And I think it's so amazing that we still have that, and that they like exist and are still, creating all these beautiful things and making amazing things. So I don't know. I've always been like a huge advocate for that, and like loved the culture and how rich it is, and like really appreciated it. But this made me just appreciate it and learn about it so much more. And I'm really thankful for that, because I don't know that I would have maybe learned as much if I hadn't had to push myself, to do it like I had to do on Coco.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Between your work on Coco and the internship, you had to go back to school, right?
Yeah.
And you did the graduation film.
I did. Yes.
Is it So Long UP?
Yes, it's UP.
It's cool. Do you want to talk about this film?
Yeah. So when I ended my internship at CalArts, at Pixar, I went back to CalArts. I worked for, I was in school for another year.
You didn't know right away that you were going to come back, right?
No, I actually really wanted to stay at Pixar.
Yeah, I remember a lunch we had, and you were kind of sad or scared that you won't be able to come back in 1 year. And
it's true.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's so nostalgic. I'm like, if I had known then that I would eventually be able to come back, I would have just relaxed and done actually I would have done the same thing probably, but like it's really hard when you don't know what's going to happen. The uncertainty of being a student and like graduating and not knowing what you're going to do is like the worst. It's so scary, especially because, being an international student is very difficult, like because you have to get the visa, and that's like a whole thing to add on top of like the stress. But anyway, so I went back to school after the internship, and that was great. But I was so behind on all my critical studies credits that I couldn't really focus on my thesis project of making a film. And they count your portfolio as a thesis project as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, maybe I'll just like work really hard on my portfolio so I can get a job by the time I graduate and go back to Pixar. That's all like I wanted to do. But then so I worked on my portfolio, and then I like pretty much killed myself like finishing all my critical studies, and like tried really hard to finish that because I didn't want to be held back and stay longer at school. So I was taking like the most credits I've ever taken like at any school. Like I literally had class like all the time. And I had so much to do, like so many essays to write and so many projects to finish. So I was like, well, maybe I can work on my portfolio like after school. But I was still trying to do that like every night. So I was sleeping in average about 3 or 4 hours a night.
Wow.
For like almost the whole year. And at the end, I wasn't even sleeping that much. Like, so it was very tough. But so when I finished all my critical studies, I still had 2 months left at school. So I was like, oh, it doesn't make sense for me to graduate from a film program if I'm not, if I don't make a film.
Of course.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm going to make the film I was planning on making because I already had the story and I
okay.
knew what I wanted to do. So I just made it in I made it in 3 weeks.
Cool.
And I got help from my friends, of course. My friend Rachel helped me out. My friend Jan, Pepe, and Olga. They helped me like color stuff. They helped me with a bit of animation. Oh, and Colin, my friend Colin too. So that was great. I got help from my friends. They're the best. But yeah, I was able to finish it in 3 months. And it's a story based on a dog that my sister had when she first moved to the north of Mexico to go to college. And so my parents got her this dog because we bought it at a little market in Mexico, and they told us the dog was a lab. So we're like, oh, but it's so small. And they're like, yeah, it's because, the dogs were born a little early, but they're like they're labs. And then I was like, okay, cool. And my mom got it for my sister so that she wouldn't be so lonely, like, moving away from home and stuff. And then like a year later, my sister comes back with the dog, and it's like the ugliest dog you've ever seen. It's like so small, like not a lab at all. It's like the smallest, like scruffiest, like most prickly dog you've ever seen. And like, that doesn't matter, but also she had like the worst personality. It was like the worst dog. Like she would like pee everywhere, and like she like chewed on everything. So she destroyed things, and like, just like she wouldn't calm down. She was like, those toys that have like the battery, and like
and they flip?
Yeah, and they flip. Yeah. Yuppie was like those dogs. Or I mean like those toys. Like she was just so restless, and like, oh my God, she would go to the house next door and then go into the bushes, and then she'd come back and be like filled with those like spines and like weird like trash. I don't know. And I appreciated Yuppie, but
yeah,
she was a very interesting dog, and then my parents ended up giving her away because my sister wasn't going to take care of her because she moved to South Africa, and then after that she moved to Holland, and my parents didn't want to deal with Yuppie, so they gave her away. And then my sister was really sad, and she's like, why would you do that? It's like, she's your dog. Like, we don't have to take care of your dog, and she's the worst. But then it made her really sad. I think she felt really guilty after that, and she said that she would have nightmares about Yuppie sometimes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
God.
So then that's what my film's about.
Yeah. You graduated, and you did some freelance work, if I'm correct?
I did. Yeah, I did.
Yeah. For what studios?
So that year I worked for, so right after school, I started freelancing for Jib Jab.
Yeah.
It's when they started doing their storyboards, Storybots show, which is now on Netflix. So I was doing some work for that, working with a song. He was my art director at the time.
Was it was Ellen working at the time also at Jib Jab?
Yeah, I think Ellen was there at the time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because that was right after school. It's true.
Yeah.
Yes, Ellen was there, and I think she was also working on that because there were a lot of different episodes they were working on. So I worked for Jib Jab for like 2 months, I think, on this project. And I was in Mexico that whole time because I just went home for the summer, and my sister was getting married that summer, so I wanted to be home. So I was working remotely. Also, I had a job lined up at Disney TV.
Cool.
So I had an interview for Disney TV, and I got offered a job, and this was, I think, with Shane Prigmore. But then it fell through while I was in Mexico.
Oh.
So they canceled it, and I didn't even get to have my first day at Disney TV.
No.
So they told me that, and I was like, oh man, it sucked because the people that had been hired to be on the show at the same time as me, who stayed, they started working on it right away. So because they were already Disney TV employees, they got to stay at the studio. But because I hadn't like even done my paperwork or anything, like, and I was just hired for that show, then I didn't, to have that opportunity. So that was sad. But then I had the Jib Jab gig, and I was like, okay, I'll just do this summer, see how it goes, and then I'll look for something when I'm back. So then when I got back, I kept applying to like every job I could. Like I applied to Nickelodeon like a ton of times, and Cartoon Network. Like I took, I think maybe like 10 different tests for different shows. SpongeBob. Oh, that would have been so fun.
Oh yeah.
And then what else? Like Steven Universe, and a bunch of new shows too. One that Phil Vose was art directing, and that one like looked super cool. Oh, I think it ended up being Pickle and Peanut. But the initial artwork that Phil Vose was doing for that was super cool. Anyway, I took a bunch of tests, and like I didn't ever get a call back. And then I took a test. Oh, and then so at the time, Fox had this branch called ADHD. That was like an animation extension of Fox. So I worked there for like 2 or 3 months. But it didn't take me that long to realize that I didn't really like it very much, and I don't think that they would sponsor my visa.
Okay.
So I was like, I don't really want to spend time here if there's no chance for me to like grow or do anything. So I left and I quit, and then I was without a job again. And then Thorup Van Orman reached out to me, and he was going to direct, I think, the show called Home, which was based on the movie Home at DreamWorks TV. So he reached out to me, and then he's like, hey, I really like your work, and we'd love to like work with you. So then I was like, sure, yeah, totally. So I started freelancing for them for DreamWorks TV. And then I did that for also like a couple months. And then, that was like with the promise of potentially working there.
Yeah.
Like full time, and like them sponsoring my visa and stuff, because they're very good with visas. I had heard about that before. And then so I did the freelance, and then a month went by, and they're like, we need to like get a little more and like get to know you better before that happens. So then I worked with them for another month. But I think the art director ended up leaving eventually.
Yeah.
And I think they were like not sure of what they wanted the show to look like, and a lot of things were changing. So I didn't think it was a good time for me to be there either. So I quit again. They never hired me full time, but I also chose to leave and stop doing work for them. Because I was really pressured because of the visa stuff. So I was like, if this is not going anywhere, then I can't
You stop.
do this. Yeah. So then after that, like 2 weeks later, I got a call back from Google, because my friend Sophie works there, and I think they had gone to Portfolio Day and they liked my work, and they wanted me to do freelance for them. And I think they were also hiring artists at that time, like full time. So then I started doing freelance for them, and I took a test. First, I took the test, and then they liked it, so I started freelancing for them. And I did, I think, like 5 Google Doodles for them during that time, and it's great. Like, they're such a good company. Like, they really take care of you. Like, the pay is really good, the benefits are good, like the people were nice to, easy to work with. Like, I loved it. And I was very happy doing that work. And I started talking to the then head of that department about like the full-time position. And from what I heard, like they were going to move forward with it, and we were going to start, doing paperwork and stuff for that. And then I got the call back from Harley. I got an email from Harley saying, like, do you want to come back to Pixar? And I was like, yes.
Wow.
And at this point, it was May, and my visa expired in July.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was like.
Did you have a plan if you didn't have a call back?
No, well, I was going to go to Google.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I was still going to move to the Bay Area, and I liked the idea of working for Google. But then when Harley called me, I was like, oh, well, there's a lot of great things about Google, but I wouldn't be working in film. And I really, really, really just wanted to come back and work on Coco. I think that was like my main motivation. If it had been like a random film, even if it's good, it's like, well, you can do that anywhere. But this was like truly like my main motivation was because I just wanted to be a part of Coco.
Can you explain a bit your working process on the film?
Sure. So when I came in, I was, usually at Pixar, they like to cast people in, one position. So you're an art director, or you're like a character designer, or you're a set designer, or you do shading, or, so there's like very like specific things that people do. In my experience, I've been like always kind of like I just like doing a lot of things, I'm very interested in storytelling, and I'm very interested in like the concept art part of it, like drawing and design. Like I love that. And, I love graphic design as well and stuff. So like, I think I got lucky because the production designer and I had like a very direct, good relationship based on like, having known him during my internship and having spent a lot of time with him and stuff. Like that was very good for me, because when I came back, I already know who I was working with, and he knew my strengths. So I think he kind of was trying to like I was always just kind of doing my own thing, with him. So I worked on very like specific projects, like the murals project, like working on murals for like to dress like the City of the Dead and the City of the Living too. And then I worked on some sets too, but he would always pick like the sets that I think I could like be more helpful with, I guess, like the set where there's a talent show, when you see the skull in the background with all the glitter and stuff. I worked on that, and like actually that whole set outside the Grand Central Station, I worked on that too. I did a ton of set dressing, so like interior design, which I love. And it was really fun. And then I got to do like a lot of color work.
Did you do costumes? Because you said in the CalArts
I did. I did a ton of costume design. I worked on like some of the main characters' costumes, like Mama Coco. Like I drew the pattern for her dresses and stuff. And I did a lot of design for the opening of the film, when you see all the dancers with their different dresses dancing. And then actually a lot in general, like I did a lot of costume design for all the characters, even like the background characters too. I worked on that project along with other people, of course, but I did a lot of that work. And yeah, I did a bit of everything. That translation, I did some graphic design on it too, like a lot of the signs that you see on top of the buildings and stuff, like I worked on. So a bit of everything. I did a bit of character design for background. characters and helped with Miguel's mom with her design. So yeah, I mean, everything, is a collaboration. It's not always just one person's work, but I think I felt very lucky that I got to jump around and like help out on different things because it kept things interesting, and I was able to it exposed me to a lot of new things that I didn't know I could do.
That's funny because just after that, you had the opportunity to work alone on the book
Yes.
of Coco. The title is Miguel and the Grand Harmony.
Oh, yes.
So how did you end up illustrating this book?
So I think because of my involvement in the film, I was very lucky because that exposed me also, or that gave me exposure to with the director and, working so closely with Harley and stuff. Like, I think he would bring up my name a lot in meetings and stuff. And I think they had a meeting once. Oh, and I'm also good friends with Adrian. So he knows my work. And we really enjoyed like working together. So I think because of that, maybe, they considered me for it because they like my work. And I think because they also like working with me and they thought that I'd be, a good fit for it because maybe my work or something. But also I think they were really pushing for Latino, hopefully character, Mexican people to work on these projects and make, work on the books and a lot of the stuff that they were working on outside of Pixar, like all the merchandise stuff. They commissioned a lot of Mexican artists to do that. And there's, I don't know, there's more Mexican people at the studio, not in art, but I guess Danny Arriaga, and then there's a few animators and people in shading. But I think, I don't know, I think it was ultimately up to Lee, Adrian, and Harley. They talked to consumer products, and I had expressed interest to consumer products as well.
Cool.
That I, would love to make a book if possible. And then they're like,
And how was it to work by yourself then?
It was really great. It was very scary. It was definitely scary. I think coming from the thing is like when you work with a team, they make everything better. It's like you give them something and then they give you back something amazing, and you're like, whoa, they just like made it 1,000,000 times better because there's so many like extremely talented, smart people here. So when you do something on your own, like that's it. Like that's all they get, and no one's gonna make it better. So I was kind of worried about that because I'm like, oh man, what every brushstroke, like that's gonna be what they see, which is also very exciting because I think on the other hand, like we don't normally get like full credit for anything ever because you never get to see what we do on the screen, like as is. Hardly, it kind of happened a little bit with the prologue at the opening of the film, but other than that, like what art does, it's like, there's tons of layers after you give someone a design. So anyway, it's very exciting too to have more like autonomy over your work and to be able to say like, oh yeah, I did that. So that was really, it was scary, but it was also really exciting, and it was like a really great feeling. I didn't have a ton of time for it, so I was kind of, I felt very overworked around that time because I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't really eating. I lost a lot of weight during that time. I was working Saturdays and Sundays on the book. And I think maybe it had to do with like just timing and, organization and stuff. But ultimately, like publishing offered help, and they told me like, well, you don't have to do everything alone. We would be happy to like help find someone to help you out. So they did offer. They were very, very nice, and I loved working with like everyone in publishing is like so supportive. And I don't think that was like the whole timing was their fault because we were waiting a while for, to get the text and all those things. So it was like a combination of things. But I think in the end, in the end, I didn't really want the help because I wanted to have the book be like my book. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I know it sounds selfish, but when you get a chance to do like something on your own, I
especially
just
with
kind
this
of,
project.
yeah, especially with this project, like I just wanted to be able to prove or to do it for myself and for every, for yeah, I don't know. It's like I generally love collaborating, but for some reason with this book, I was like, it's very tiring, but I really just want to be able to do it on my own. Like it was really important for me.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's great. And can you tell us, maybe for this book, maybe more in general, in your work, what are your inspiration in visual arts, in music, cinema, literature? You told me in the beginning that you loved movies when you were younger. Can
Yeah.
you tell me your inspiration?
Oh man, I have so many. It's like it also goes like this,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
depending on where you're at in your life. I guess initially, um, I was super into horror films and
Really?
like sci-fi movies. Like
Which ones?
and just kind of like more obscure. Like I
Oh,
love, now like it's, they're like famous cult movies, but I guess I really love like Pink Flamingos, like John Waters movies. I found like super like, what is this? It's so
yeah.
weird. I like binge watched all his movies in high school, and like growing up, I was like so fascinated, like morbidly fascinated by them because it's not pleasant to watch. Um, it's not pleasant to watch, but it's like, it's just, it's it creates a reaction, and
Yeah.
as like a teenager, I guess like I didn't really understand like what that was or like why he was making it or how someone could see life so differently. So I think that's what I found very like fascinating, and how like you can create like a super crazy world and make it feel normal in a movie.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, that was like crazy. Like I love like funny games or like Rocky Horror Picture Show. Like I really like the Coen Brothers movies. Well, those are
And
westerns, but they're
music and literature?
Um, I think I've always really loved like children's books. I'm not like the best reader. It's very embarrassing. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. But before I had audiobooks, I would only really read like children's books or, books like Catcher in the Rye or like Perks of Being a Wallflower or, Da Vinci Code, things like that. And I loved reading artists' biographies,
Yeah.
like their stories and like why they became who they are. Like there's this
Yeah.
artist I really love. I'm blinking on the name. I have his art present in my head. Oh, Henry Darger. Like I loved his work growing up, and I had this like book, and I loved reading about like his story. Like because it's so tragic. It's like sad, but it's also very sweet. And I loved like Roald Dahl. I loved Roald Dahl. Like all his books are so good. Like I read those, and I was like obsessed with Matilda growing up.
Mm.
And yeah, like Quentin Blake is like one of my favorite
Of
illustrators.
course.
So good. I really liked like old Disney stuff back then, like the 50s, like Fred Moore and
Uh-huh.
Mary Blair.
Cool.
I still like love their work. It's so good. There's like inspiration changes all the time. I also
Yeah.
love like fashion design. I love interior design. I love like graphic design, like the Polish posters and, like a lot of amazing like designers. And just for composition, it's so like important to understand that. how graphic design works too. But yeah, I don't know. In high school, I love like, I guess the things artistic high schoolers like, like Hitchcock or Kubrick, or like,
Yeah, of course.
I love like Paul Thomas Anderson or David Lynch too, and I love like Twin Peaks too, and all those like weird like early V movies, like horror movies with like really bad effects. I was super into
Ed Wood.
that. Yeah, like Tim Burton. Early Tim Burton is so good. Like now it's kind of embarrassing to say that I was inspired by him, but honestly, his early work is so good.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah, I love like Edward Scissorhands. It's so beautiful, and like Nightmare Before Christmas really is like amazing.
Masterpiece.
And all the work that went into it, and like there's a ton of people at Pixar who worked on that movie. And I'm always like, wow, must have been like amazing to be part of history. Like it really kind of, it was a huge deal making that film. It's like it's like inspired so many people to do what they do.
How do you feel? In what way do you feel all those inspiration goes into your art?
I think it's taken time for me to like mature artistically. Definitely. I think at the time I didn't quite understand why I like those things. It's like, it's a feeling, but you don't really get why you feel the way that you do. Sometimes I still don't, but I feel like, oh, because it's good, like technically I understand like what makes it good, or like storytelling wise, it's because it's clear and it's relatable, and the characters are, even though they're not like, they don't have the same lives, like making relatable films is cool, or just or something different. It's so hard to make something that feels like quote unquote original, or that's like, that makes an impact on someone. Like it's really hard to make a film. So I think I try to remember sometimes, or think about like the things that inspired me from those movies and early inspirations and stuff. And I think what I'm trying to keep close to my heart is kind of like the like naivete, just kind of like, oh, I kind of liked not understanding what's technically good about something, and just like enjoying something because I enjoy it,
Yeah.
I think so many times, like after you go to film school or art school, like we can be so snobby sometimes, and be like, oh, that film's so bad, structure wasn't there, or like storytelling's bad, or something. But like I think I just like, what I want to keep from like my old inspirations is like that feeling of like, why did I feel that way? Or I just want to make people feel this way without necessarily worrying too much about like whether something's really technically good. Like I think it's important to have that foundation, but ultimately it's like making something that feels like authentic to who you are and organic. Because I think a lot of like my biggest inspirations were like very strong personalities. And they did them, they did like their own thing. So I think that's why they stood out, and I'm trying to like stay with that and be like, oh yeah, like they were just being themselves, and that's why they made such good work, because they weren't like trying to copy or pull from like somebody else's experience. Like they were doing these things from their own experience and pulling from what they knew, and that's why it's so powerful or so interesting, So yeah.
Cool. We're going to wrap up the interview. Maybe as a final question, can I ask you to give an advice for young people who want to do art as a living and want to work in this industry, and maybe in a big studio like you someday? Do you have like if you have to give one advice to the young ones?
Yeah. Well, first of all, people follow different paths to get to one place. So I feel like sometimes I would get really like discouraged, or be like, oh, this person has been drawing forever. Like I've only been drawing for a couple of years. Like there's no way that I would get a job before them, or that I would like be as successful as them, I don't think it really matters. Like age is so relative, like I don't think it matters when you start, as long as you really apply yourself. Like I always think of J.K. Rowling and how she was like, and she had like the most miserable life, before she wrote Harry Potter. And then look what happened. Like, it's not gonna like solve all your problems, but I feel like hard work pays off many times, and you shouldn't worry or think too much about like the end goal or like getting a job. I think the most important thing is like doing what you enjoy, and then everything else is just a consequence of that, of doing what you love and like applying yourself and working hard and being kind. I think those things are really important too, like being really kind to other people, because like we're also so quick to judge, and sometimes people make decisions that don't make sense, but I think many times you don't know what they're going through. And I think sometimes we take things very personally, and maybe it's completely unrelated to us. So if you ever don't get a job right away, or get the thing that you wanted right away, like it's fine. It teaches you resilience. Like failing, sometimes it's really good, because then it makes it easier in the future, and it makes you just keep going. So I think sometimes like people are not used to like failing, and then they like do so well their whole lives, and then suddenly something happens and it's like the whole world like crumbles.
Collapse.
And it's like collapses, exactly. And it's like, oh no, I don't know what to do. But I think it's like really important to fail, and it's really important to be okay like failing and not getting things right away, because it teaches you resilience, and it teaches you that you can like keep going, and eventually some things happen, some better things happen because of that. Like looking back at like my path, I feel like if I had gotten one of those jobs, I wouldn't have worked on Coco, because I would have been working on, other shows. And my life path would have been so different. So I feel like it was really great that those things happened to me, because it taught me that it's okay, and that I can keep going, and that eventually when you keep trying your best, like you can get to where you want to be. Just like, don't be afraid to fail. Be you also. Like, I feel like it's really important. When you start art school, so many people are so worried about like your style, right? Like what's your style? And like, I need to get a job and stuff. But like, ultimately, I feel like school is to have fun and to explore and experiment. Like, you shouldn't be worrying about like only your job, but instead like focus on developing your own artistic view, and like what you want to say. Like, think about what you want to say. And also like, you have the rest of your life to get a job, School should be like a time when you have fun. I had something else to add to that. I'm trying to think. Oh God, Johan.
Yeah.
I forgot. I was going to say, oh yeah. Okay. So I remember. So it's also really important to draw from your own experiences ultimately. Because everyone's so worried about like style, or like, if you think something's popular, then you're like, oh, then that's what I should be doing. Because this person got this job doing this, and then, it's not necessarily true. Like, studios are always looking for something new. It's like, if someone's already doing something really well, why would they want two people doing that same thing, So it's like, that's when your own artistic vision comes in. And I think you can develop that by like drawing from your own experiences and making work inspired by your own experiences and what inspires you, what makes you happy, what if I like tell the story, if someone tells a story about their lives, it's going to be more powerful than if someone else tells it for them, because they haven't lived it. So I think, literally drawing, but also pulling from your own experiences is like I think the most powerful thing you can do to make something really authentic and like refreshing and that feels original, I guess.
That is great advice, and I totally agree with you. We need to fail in order to succeed.
Yeah.
I feel it's what you're saying.
Definitely.
Thank you so much, Anna. I loved everything you said, and your life is very inspiring, I feel. And the connection you had with this company and this project at this moment of your life, at the end of your studies, is really something very few people had the chance to experience. Thank you again.
Thank you again so much. Merci pour cet entretien.
Super.
Ça fait longtemps que je parle pas français.
Mais tu parles super bien français.
Merci.
Et alors du coup, je termine en français.
Uh-huh.
Et je vais mettre tous les liens de ton Instagram et de ton livre aussi dans la description.
Oh, merci.
Merci encore, Anna, et
merci
à bientôt.
Beaucoup.
Ciao,
merci.
ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Et voilà, guys, j'espère que vous avez aimé l'interview. Merci encore, Anna, d'avoir accepté de faire cette interview en Skype depuis les studios Pixar. Et j'espère que vous avez été inspirés par la bonne humeur de Anna et sa volonté de faire. Donc Anna m'a envoyé ces magnifiques cartes dédicacées de Coco avec une illustration Coco et une dédicace. Donc pour gagner ces cartes, il vous suffit de laisser un commentaire sous le podcast et de le partager sur un réseau social comme Facebook par exemple. Donc il y aura un tirage au sort le mois prochain pour déterminer le gagnant. Je vous dis bonne chance. Du coup là je dois tirer au sort le gagnant de ce mois-ci qui gagne le dessin de Chloé Nicolet du podcast du mois dernier. Alors on est parti. Alors, et donc c'est une gagnante, c'est Marcel Peignard, j'espère que je prononce bien. Marcel Peignard, t'as gagné le dessin original de Chloé Nicolet, donc je vais te contacter sur Facebook ou sur Insta, je vais voir, et je vais te l'envoyer dans la semaine, voilà, donc tu le recevras normalement la semaine prochaine. Merci d'avoir participé, et si vous voulez gagner le dessin de Coco de Anna Ramirez, et ben vous savez ce qu'il vous reste à faire. On se retrouve le mois prochain pour un nouveau podcast. Je vous souhaite encore une fois de très belles fêtes de fin d'année et une merveilleuse année 2019. Des bisous, ciao.
Merci d'avoir écouté le podcast Apprendre le dessin avec Yo du blog apprendreledessin.com. That's all, folks.